Hello friends and fellow aliens, my name is David. Welcome to my channel. I talk about INFJ stuff because I'm an INFJ, and I talk about writing stuff and being an author because I write stuff and I'm an author. Pretty simple. If you haven't been here before, hello. We have a great community and thank you for stopping by, and I hope you find this video informative. In this particular video, I want to talk a little bit about relationships between INFJs and INTJs. And I don't necessarily mean romantic relationships. I just mean the interactions. What I'd like to do is contrast the function stack of INFJs versus INTJs and just talk a little bit about that and how they interact and how they can perceive each other. MBTI is a tool, people. And so when you look into things and you're trying to understand things about yourself, it's great to have a handle on that. But also, if you're interacting with other people, it's great to have a handle on them. It allows you to know how they are. It allows you to not take things too personally when you're communicating and to really develop an understanding of another person's point of view. That's what I'm setting out to do here by talking a little bit about the functions and highlighting some examples that I used in my book, which is right here, with two characters, one of which is an INFJ, one of which is an INTJ, and I wanted to highlight some of the dialogue between the two of them to illustrate my point about INFJs and INTJs and how they interact with one another. Before I begin, just a little personal note. I'm quickly coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my father's passing. It's a very difficult time. I am overwhelmed. I'm depressed. I'm just having a rough ride right now. And so with all of that comes trying to balance everything in life with all of these other things that have gone on and are inside my head and inside my heart. It is very difficult. Everything is triggering me these days, and it's just difficult to wake up, roll out of bed, and get through a day. I'm doing the best I can. I have been a little inconsistent as far as my uploads go. I'm trying to be better that way. But over the next week or two, because that anniversary is coming up, and then just a short week later would be my father's birthday. You may notice me just sort of disappearing, or I might be uploading. I really don't know. At this point, one day to the next, I have no idea what's going on. I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who are sticking with me through this kind of a time where I have been a bit inconsistent and trying to get back on the YouTube train and get everything rolling. I appreciate you. You are the best. Thank you very much. I promise I'll be okay. It's just a rough time right now. That's all. If you'd like to know a little bit about my personal story in terms of the loss of my brother 2.5 years ago and my father last year, I'll link some videos up here so you can go check out. I talk about it and I'm pretty open about what that was like and what that journey has been like, and in particular, what it's been like dealing with grief, because that's been the big theme for me over the last 2.5 years. Onward to the topic at hand, INFJs versus INTJs. So I'm trying to stay a little bit out of frame here to be able to put up some graphics. And what I want to do is just list out INFJ, INTJ, and when you look at these and you have a rudimentary understanding of MBTI, you'll notice the similarities, the I, the N, and the J. The difference is obviously the F and the T, feeling versus thinking. Now, that can lead you to believe, well, we're the same. We both have I's, we both have N's, we both have J's. Sure, you think more, I feel more, and that's our difference. But it's more complicated than that, because with each MBTI type, you have a cognitive function stack, and that stack can be very much so different, and it colors how you perceive the world and how you interact with it. And so that's really where the comparisons are that I would like to highlight. As an INFJ, you are a knife, N-I-F-E, right? So your dominant function is N-I, introverted intuition. Your secondary function, your auxiliary function rather, is F-E, which is extroverted feeling. Tertiary in that list is T-I, which is introverted thinking. And last in the list is extroverted sensing. For an INTJ, this is different. We still have NI as the dominant function. Yes, INTJs, INFJs, we both hoover up information about the world in a subconscious process. You are constantly absorbing and collecting details about everything that you have around you without even thinking about it. This is why NI people, dominant NIs, can be a little stuck in their own heads and a little, I don't know, it's a little weird out there, right? Like a little dreamlike in a lot of ways, because these connections and these things are happening in your heads, and it's not really something that you're actively thinking about until it hits your auxiliary function. For an INTJ, you're a knight, which means you have NI first, and you have extroverted thinking as your auxiliary function. After that, you have FI, which is introverted feeling. And then lastly, because it's the opposite of NI, is SE, which is extroverted sensing, just like the INFJ. So we do have a lot in common, but we've got flip-flopped introverted, extroverted feeling and thinking within our auxiliary and tertiary functions. I know this is like a lot of information, but I want to just sort of break it down as to how that kind of works and how an INFJ will largely see an INTJ and how an INTJ can perceive and see an INFJ. With an INFJ, our auxiliary function is FE, so that's extroverted feeling. So this is the emotions of people around you. This is when your NI is collecting information and you're going to make decisions and have a certain perception of the world, it is filtered through the lens of FE, right? Your auxiliary function. So we are often concerned with the harmony of other people. We are concerned with the emotions and feelings of individuals and groups. It is very important for us to make sure that that sort of thing is taken into account. We definitely are feelers, and this FE as your auxiliary function is why. For an INTJ, we're looking at extroverted thinking. This is what makes an INTJ very rational and objective, and they can see the world through a lens of thought to make their decisions. So it's a more of a logical thought process. It's not so much how somebody feels, though of course everybody can take that into consideration. INTJs are humans just like INFJs. Just like INFJs can absolutely use logic. Just because we have certain functions in our stack doesn't mean you can't use the other end of that function. We all have them. It's just that we have our preferences. So for an INTJ, that extroverted thinking really does tend to see the world in a very logical way. They want to make decisions based on that logic and based on that rational, objective view of what is going on, the information that they've collected through their NI and their surroundings. Our tertiary comparison would be for the INFJ TI, which is introverted thinking. That is our logical thought process, and it's a bit more internal. It's why when we're thinking through things, we're pretty much running through those things in our own head. It's an internal process versus an external process, logically looking at the surroundings and kind of reading the room in a rational way. So for us, it's a little bit lower than our extroverted feeling. So we can use logic. It's just not our preferred way of making decisions, but it will help keep our emotional decision making in check, because we know that even though we may feel a certain way, there's a right thing to do when we apply some logic to a situation. It can cause a lot of trouble for an INFJ balancing that feeling and that thinking. And I believe it's one of the reasons that we tend to put others before ourselves, because we are looking at that person, we are thinking about that person's feelings, we are going to make a decision based on that, and we're going to put our own logical thought process aside sometimes in order to come to that conclusion. For an INTJ, your tertiary function is FI. That is introverted or internal feeling. That is how you feel about certain things, how you feel about situations, how you feel about people. For an INTJ, and certainly for the ones that I've known in my life, they've been pretty solid on how they feel about a particular thing and making decisions based on that rational logic and being pretty concrete in how they perceive something, how they see it, how they see the world, and how they feel about situations. I see INTJs as very principled people. And whereas INFJs, with that constant fight with feeling first and that constant fight, we tend to be a little bit more uncertain about things. With SE last for the both of us, that's just how we stay grounded in the world. It's a weaker function, obviously. It's our inferior function in both cases. And so we can get overwhelmed with external stimulus. We can get overwhelmed with that sensory world. It's why you may have a difficulty, both of you, in crowds or in large group settings. The feeling that we both tend to get is, oh, hell no, when it comes to interacting with and being around groups of people and a lot of external stimulus. Because of that FE-FI-TE-TI switch on INFJs and INTJs, you have to understand that that colors the way we can perceive one another. An INFJ will oftentimes see an INTJ, unless you really get to know them, as blunt, critical, or almost using logic to a fault and not considering the emotional aspect of decision making and other people. INTJs to us can seem pretty opinionated. I like to call it principled instead of opinionated, but that's just me. INTJs, on the flip side, will see INFJs often as very idealistic, almost too idealistic, too concerned with the feelings and emotions of other people, because they can see us as being blind to the logical path forward because we're so concerned with the emotional path and the harmony and not rocking the boat. INTJs can see us as overly emotional and a lot of times as uncertain and unsure. Hesitant to use the phrase wishy-washy, but certainly a lot of impatient INTJs who are sick of our extroverted feeling crap are going to see us as wishy-washy a lot of times. It happens, and it's just a slight lack of understanding of how we perceive and what weight we put on our functions in order to make our decisions and live our life in the world. None of this means that INFJs and INTJs can't get along. I have had coworkers that are INTJs, and honestly, I don't think there's any better coworker for an INFJ than an INTJ, because INTJs can see some of those details a bit better than we can. They can really narrow down and keep us in check, where we have this broad, grander vision about helping others or doing things for the benefit of a larger group. The INTJ can look at that and say, logically, this is what needs to happen in order for that to occur. So in my dynamic with one of my very close friends as an INTJ, he was able to really nail down my idealistic vision and apply it to some rational thought in order to help me make the right decisions to see that through. It was a great dynamic, and I think as a working dynamic, INFJs and INTJs get along very, very well. When it comes to a relationship dynamic, and I have been in a relationship with an INTJ, there's definitely room for some trouble there, because that feeling that we have applied to somebody in a romantic relationship where things are more logical and more rational can really cause you to butt heads. And as an INFJ, we can take criticism to heart very, very easily. Our FI, our introverted feeling, is low. It's in our shadow stack. It's a very critical way of looking at ourselves. Whereas for an INTJ, they're pretty certain of how they feel about things. And so having to deal with somebody that is uncertain and that sometimes may have a hard time seeing things logically, that can test an INTJ's patience in a major, major way. Whereas for an INFJ, that INTJ's view of looking at things very rationally, objectively, and almost in a colder and more calculated way, we can perceive that as, well, you don't care about the feelings of other people. You're just thinking about this in a very blunt and critical manner. So that can cause issues between the two types. This is something that I wanted to highlight in my book. I have two characters. My main character is an INFJ, and that is William St. Denis. William is very much so stuck in his own head. He is having a difficult time. Just for a little bit of background on the book, this is a supernatural story. So it occurs in what you would see as a reality that you are in currently, but there's this entire undercurrent of things below the surface based in psychology that allow this story to unfold and really highlight William's journey. One of the things I wanted to do in the book was give a character to William that would challenge him in very, very stern and difficult ways. So I created an INTJ character by the name of Duncan. I don't want to get too into spoilers or backgrounds or anything like that. All I wanted to do was highlight some conversation between William and Duncan, and I'm going to read a couple passages and put them up here on the screen so you can read along with me, just to highlight some of the differences and talk about how some of these interactions between an INFJ and an INTJ can occur and why. If you haven't picked up the book, I would love it if you would. I am a self-published author, so I have to market this. This is all me. This is not a publishing company or anything like that. If I'm not asking you to buy the book, nobody's asking you to buy the book, and then nobody reads the book, and that just sucks for me. It is available on Amazon. There's links in the description down there and all that kind of stuff. I've got over 100 reviews. It is 5 stars. I guarantee you, if you like the dynamics between INFJs, INTJs, and these different types, and you like a really good story with some gore in it and some emotional stuff in it, I really tried to wrap it all into this book. And in large part, writing and finishing this book was my way of coping with the loss of my brother. So it is a very personal, very internal thing for me. And I appreciate, if you've read it, I appreciate you being on that journey with me. I'm glad that you guys like it. And I want to keep that going. And I want other people to know that this book exists and to see it and experience the story for themselves. So onward. If you have the book, we're going to go to chapter 18, right? It's Duncan the Deceiver. This is his introduction as a chapter. And this is the first time where William is meeting somebody that is so challenging to the way he is as an INFJ. The reason Duncan was created was to contrast William's feeling and his need to feel with somebody that is looking at something very rationally, which William needs to do in order to grow. So these two characters very much so challenge each other, help each other grow because of their differences in their cognitive function stack. The first bit is a part of internal dialogue that's inside of William, and this is going to kind of set the stage, right? The first paragraph, or the first line, a couple lines in chapter 18. For a moment, I wondered if Duncan was being serious about Elise being dead, or if he was trying to manipulate me. I knew it would be insane to trust him. Here comes that seed of distrust that William has, because Duncan is a thinker and William is a feeler. And it's difficult for him to see this and to understand truly what Duncan's motivation is when he's challenging William, telling him that he's making mistakes and so on and so forth. He's trying to figure that out and he's not really sure how he feels about it, other than the fact that I don't trust this guy, I don't like him. The reason for that is because William is a feeler and Duncan is a thinker. So I'm immediately trying to draw the contrast within the two. So I'll put Duncan's parts in red and William's parts in blue, just so you can see the difference. So red for the INTJ, blue for the INFJ, okay? Stop posturing, he said, his grip not changing. Stop denying who you are. Oh, I said. You know who I am then. Duncan looked down at my coat, as if peering through to have a glance, then back up to my eyes. You are death's caretaker, and the longer you take to embrace that, the more pathetic you are. How long can one sad episode of denial last? More than a century? So in this part, and the reason I highlighted this one is because Duncan he's going to relentlessly hammer on the fact that William is struggling with his identity, with his place in the world. And to Duncan, that doesn't make logical sense because it's this sad episode of denial. He's right there, he's highlighting that you are too much of a feeler, William. And you need to get off of that and you need to step back and look at things a bit more logically in order to find your place. While it's very contentious within the two of them, Duncan is, at this point, trying to help him, just in his own way, which of course William is seeing as opinionated and brash and cold and calculating. Moving on to page 171. So in this scene, they're getting into a car together. And Duncan is having this conversation with him. Duncan's really toying with William at this point because they don't know each other that well. And so it's their first few interactions. And Duncan is zeroed in. Logically, he knows what he wants to do to William. William is trying to figure this situation out. So in this passage in particular, I'm highlighting Duncan's rational thought and his logical thought process and William's feeling through the situation, and why William being so stuck on that feeling becomes trouble for him. Duncan is setting him up for basically a trap, just to highlight how irrational William is being. We wound our way to the lower level of the parking garage. I unlocked the SUV with a key fob as we approached. "Hand it over," Duncan said. "I'll drive." "No," I replied. He stopped and stared at me. "No, absolutely not," I added. "Caretaker," he said, taking a step toward me. "I don't trust your head or your heart. If on a whim you steer into oncoming traffic, I die, and you walk away. We both know that." Moving forward just a little bit. I nodded. "Fair enough," I said, dropping the key fob into his outstretched hand. "Consider this a first effort toward trust." Duncan walked to the driver's side and climbed in while I settled into the passenger seat. He let out an emotionless chuckle as he buckled his seatbelt and began pulling out of the parking spot. "What is it?" I asked. "You're a mushy, gullible fool," he replied. "It's funny. It's sad." I shook my head. Deep down, I was feeling unsettled. Perhaps he was right. "I could beg you, and you would bend and break. Oh, please, Mr. Caretaker, give me the blade. I'd feel safer if you didn't have it, and you would hand it over like a browbeaten, disobedient child." So again, in these passages, I'm really trying to highlight that difference between the two of them. Duncan knows what he wants, and he knows that he can play with William and manipulate him by appealing to him on an emotional level. And William, because he's unhealthy and not seeing things clearly, falls right into it. Duncan asks him for the keys, tells him that he can get hurt so easily if he doesn't have them, if William is driving, because William can't be hurt or killed. And so William's like, fine, and hands over the keys. And this, to Duncan, is just like, look at you. Look at how sad you are. Like, I can just appeal to any emotion that you have, and you're just gonna bend and break and do whatever I say because it's so easy to manipulate you. I highlighted this further by this line. I shook my head. Deep down, I was feeling unsettled. Perhaps he was right. It's William directly questioning how he feels about the situation because his logic is messing with his feelings. He's stuck between the two of them, right? What's the right thing to do? Is the right thing to do to hand over the keys, or is it not? Like, maybe he's right. Maybe I am gullible. It was so easy to trick me. So Duncan really nailing him down, nailing him to the wall on his feelings and how he feels about things and how that can cloud his judgment to make the wrong decisions. The last bit I wanted to read for you right here, again, I'll put it up, is similar to that, where I'm really just drawing the contrast and highlighting the differences between the two and why. And now you're going to get an idea straight from Duncan as to why he's so irritated with William and why that feeling aspect of William and that lack of direct logic that he's applying to the situation, and because he doesn't want to upset Duncan, even though he doesn't even like him at this point, is really something that Duncan finds just really unpalatable, put it that way. "More than a century spent running around with her, and you still treat her like a possession. I'm surprised she hasn't given up on you and let your miserable self die. Don't tell me how to do my job." He leaned forward. "Oh, I'm going to tell you, because even though I'm aligned with someone else and think you're a fool, the way you treat your responsibility offends me on the deepest of levels." I felt anger welling up. "Offends?" Duncan looked out the window, stretching a hand out as if to show me the world. "This whole place before you, and it has given you this gift, yet you spend your time whining and pining over things you cannot have. The literal end of life is something you hold in the palm of your hands, and you just cry over destiny and play this poor William routine. Yes, offends. Other people just feel sorry for you. It's embarrassing. Honestly, I think most just tolerate you." So drawing it here, this section, the reason I wanted to do that was to give you that real idea that Duncan is not just manipulating William. He is really trying to dig in and show William in his own way that what William is doing to himself isn't serving him well. So Duncan wants William to grow, and not just for the purpose of manipulation, but he needs William to grow for a certain reason. And so doing this and challenging him and saying, you know what, it offends me that you're not looking at situations rationally and logically. It offends me that you're just so swallowed up by your own emotions that you can't think straight. And you make these stupid decisions and you walk around and you're just crying and, oh, woe is me. Duncan is very much so hitting on all this logic about it, while William is stuck on this feeling about it. In further passages in the book and further chapters a little bit later on, which I'm not going to get into, it's a great book. Please just give the book a read. You're going to have scenes where the flip ends up happening, where William understands Duncan better because of all of this explaining and all of this communicating that they're doing. And then William ends up zeroing in on Duncan's feelings and really dragging that out into the light. And both of them have a very difficult time with it. A lot of people say that in the book, these two end up in like a kind of bromance. I'm not going to deny that. Duncan was my favorite character to write. As much as I love my main character, William, Duncan was my favorite to pen. To type, because my handwriting sucks. So I hope this helps you, both as a writer and just as an INFJ or INTJ or somebody interested in MBTI and how these interactions can happen and how they can occur. As a writer, it's not too difficult to take a character and say, okay, these are the functions that they would be using. This is probably where their behavior would lean. And these are the issues. This is the contrast. This is the conflict between two characters that drives a great relationship and a great story. If they just agreed, then they're just two people that are walking around agreeing on anything. You might as well just have one character because there's no contrast drawn. So let me know what you think. As an INFJ, as an INTJ, or as somebody that's just interested in these dynamics, chime in below. If you've read the book and you have something to say about the dynamic between William and Duncan, I love hearing about readers' perceptions of the characters that I've created and the world at large. So please, let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. And thank you for watching this video. If you like what you're seeing here, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. I am going to be okay. I might just need a little bit of time here, folks, because things are a little rough right now. So thank you for sticking with me on this one. I look forward to seeing you in the comments and chatting with some of you, and I will catch up with you again very, very soon.